My name is James Dollar. I'm a U.S. Army veteran, and I served from 1990 to 2016. Well, Veterans Day originally came out of World War I. America had lost 116,000 men in that conflict. This is war on a scale that had not been seen by the rest of the world ever. On the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month, the armistice was signed that ended hostilities in Europe. A year later, on the anniversary, President Woodrow Wilson declared that there would be Armistice Day, and that we would remember the sacrifices of the men that served and their bravery and appreciate the victory. This was done with parades and ceremonies, and there was a 2-minute cessation of business at 11 a.m. In 1926, the Congress decided that they would make a formal declaration. It was not just a celebration of the soldiers that served in World War I, it was a celebration of peace, and it was actually a peace holiday. Of course, it was a little early because in 1939, World War II began. And in 1954, President Eisenhower, in order to recognize the service of all those who served in World War II in Korea, changed it to Veterans Day. The last addition to it was in 2016, President Obama signed a Veterans Day moment of silence, so that at 3:11 in the afternoon, there's supposed to be a 2-minute of silence recognized by the United States people. Here in America, we are blessed with prosperity and freedom, but what we are often short of is gratitude. It's an opportunity to reach out and thank those people who guaranteed those safeties, that prosperity.
I'm Nanika, and welcome to Eversoul Run. So, you three are have served in the military, right?
Yes. Right.
Yes. So, what branches were all three of you guys serving in?
I was in the active army.
Hi, AJ Hensel. I was in the active army as well.
My name's Carl I, and I was in the Army too.
Nice. So what was your favorite, why did you guys choose to serve in the Army?
I actually never really thought about joining the Army until I was recruited out of high school to play football for the United States Military Academy that's in New York. And so I was going to go play college football, and then as part of that, you have a 5-year military obligation to serve in the Army. And so I was all about that.
My family was in the military for a long time, and I actually played baseball at the University of Connecticut. And when I didn't have an option to go pro, didn't get drafted, nothing like that happened, I needed to go get a job. And I was in ROTC, so I took a commission as second lieutenant, and 23 years later I came out.
Have you guys been able to connect with each other and other people who you served with?
Yeah, I still stay in touch with a lot of my my friends and colleagues that were in the Army with me. It's really a brotherhood, a fraternity kind of sorts. I mean, when you have that common bond of service, and so yeah, I mean, every year I get together with some of my old colleagues and talk about the old days. Yeah.
Mine's similar in regard to the fact, let me say this, the internet's really helped keep us all together. Obviously, that's number one. Number two is 23 years, I met a lot of people in the military, and I became close to them and endeavored to stay in touch because I just care for them. And we've been through some tough times together.
I'm going to assume that you were very excited to see loved ones and friends.
Yeah, it's hard to put into words what normal is like when you come back from a combat zone. And so, you know, we take for granted all these kind of like, remember during COVID when you couldn't go to the restaurant, you couldn't do all these things that you were used to doing, that you enjoy, seeing people. It was kind of like that for me when I got back from Iraq, and having to get used to driving and being around crowded people, and because after being a year away in a place where there's a lot of violence and things are uncertain, it makes for it hard to kind of transition. But you know, I was very fortunate to have a loving wife and a family around me to help support.
Any experiences that you sort of cherished when you were in?
My experience in that is, you don't look like me, she doesn't, he doesn't look exactly like me, he doesn't. What's interesting about being in combat with people who are from all walks of life, everybody bleeds the same color red.
Yeah.
And it's amazing how much some of the, it's not trivial, but some of the things that we're not good at back here in this country, sometimes with race issues, whatever, those really do go away, in my opinion, when you deploy. Because that's Sergeant Smith, he's not African American, she's not female, she is Sergeant Smith, that's Lieutenant Jones. They have roles to play, and their roles keep me alive, and my role keeps them alive. I think that's very important. It's one of the cool things about being in the military. All services, we're all in the Army, but I mean, I would say that my friends that were in the Navy or in the Marine Corps, Coast Guard, they'd say the same thing. When you're, particularly when you're scared, you know, there's no black, white, Indian. It's sergeant, lieutenant, and you're doing a mission, and you all want to go home together.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is a really good point. One of the cool things about the military, right, is you have all these different jobs and these specialties, but collectively, right, you have one mission, and they all come together. I couldn't do my job without a communications guy, so that I could call back and talk to people that I needed to talk to, and you know, it's a really well said. There's not race or anything. We are one person, one thing moving forward.
I have one other point to show that I think is pretty cool. This is when I went to Somalia, not Iraq. It's pretty cool to be an American. We came into Somalia and people lined the streets because they were afraid and they were cheering us on. George H.W. Bush was the president at the time. They had pictures and murals of him everywhere. We got off where we got out of the airport and got on the trucks, and we had rifles and we were ready to, you know, this could get scary. Instead, people were just excited to be there. I think the same thing happened when I went to Iraq. The same thing happens to me when I experience other deployments. People were excited because I think the United States of America represents hope for a lot of people.
What were like some impacts that you had like after leaving? Like what kind of stuck with you, good or bad?
I had a newfound focus that I still am pretty proud of, because I had really made a lot of mistakes when I was younger, your guys' age, and it just getting the discipline to decide not to do that anymore, really focus. I'm amazed sometimes when I look back. I'm like, how did I get here? You know, I went from being a dropout to a doctor. I don't know how I did that.
I would say we're different. We're not better, but we're different from some of the things he just talked about. I mean, I don't get shook up over a lot of things. I mean, when you've been shot at or scudded, you know, and you've been this close to something terrible happening to you, there's not a lot out here, and thankfully in this country we're in that hairy of a situation typically. So when I see some of my friends that didn't serve in the military get upset about, you know, I had a car accident, I'm like, well, you're still here, you know, get another car. It doesn't shake me like it shakes a lot of the people, and I think that goes true for a lot of the people that I serve with the military. So
do you guys remember like how your family's reaction to it, or like how you like told them that you got in? Or
Yeah, my dad asked me how much money it would take for me not to do it, but I was very dead set on it. I knew I needed to be a better person. I thought that was the best way.
do you think there was like an event in your life, or like a person that probably inspired you to do this, or like he said, like it's probably maybe his family, or like something like that?
Yeah, I would give it to Pat Tillman. After I remember, I was just sitting there. I was like, how can someone that awesome, like, do that? And it really inspired me. I thought about it for a weekish, something like that. And I would say that was the direct influence. That was probably the biggest individual influence outside of maybe my grandfather who had served.
Anybody come to mind for you?
My dad and I are very close, but I'd share the point he made about post 9/11. Maybe another question might be an event. The United States military had no problems recruiting. I was really impressed with how many patriots said, "I'm coming in," like what he said.
Yeah.
He was going to serve because we just got our tails kicked by somebody from another planet, another world, and Americans really came forward. I was really impressed how many young men and women decided to serve their country after that.
Well, what was something in the military, or in the course of that you probably would like never forget? Like how long, like a person or an event?
I'll take that one to start. When I was in Iraq, there were children everywhere, young kids, not unlike kids here, except for they didn't know that they were poor and they didn't have clothes, and the smiles on their faces. I just remember thinking that they don't have any perception of that they're living in such a tough place. And I mean, I still think about these children because they, on one particular day in particular, they would always play on the soccer field. Kids in Iraq love to play soccer, and they weren't playing there one day. And I remember thinking, this is really weird. Why aren't the kids out here playing? And the reason they weren't out there playing is because there were some bombs that the bad guys had put on the road. And those kids were telling us through their actions, don't drive down this way. Our family told us to stay out of here today because there was going to be something that bad happened. And I think about those kids a lot now that I have kids of my own.
I'll take a little different take. These guys are talking about some of the combat experiences that I share with them, and I think they're both spot on and certainly helping fellow soldiers. Then, of course, the kids was a big deal for me as well, particularly in Somalia as well as in Iraq. But what people don't realize, there's a lot of opportunity in the military. So in my career, 23 years, I was in Ronald Reagan's funeral, which was amazing to be on Constitution Avenue with people on either side of the road that never met Ronald Reagan sitting there crying as he drove by in his casket. It was quite a pomp and circumstance event, and I was part of that. I was in George W. Bush's inauguration, so I was the first ball officer that he went to. I stood right next to the president, first lady, and he was super nervous, and she wasn't. I can tell you, I remember that story. So I've had some unique experiences just by virtue of a long time in the military, and then of course 9/11. I was at the Pentagon when it happened, so that was a big deal. And get back more to the combat thing, but that was the nation was really suffering. So I've experienced that as well. It's only happened twice in the modern era, certainly Pearl Harbor and then 9/11, where we've been attacked on our own soil. So all of a sudden it got very real very quick. So as opposed to in a combat zone like these two gentlemen described, outside of that, there are some great opportunities in the military. This is not a recruiting pitch, but certainly something that people don't really associate with the military.
Well, being in the military, you must have had to you must have had a lot of changes. Do you ever feel like before being in the military you would have taken things for granted, but then being in the military, you've learned that's just you can't do that?
Yeah, I slept on a piece of plywood for a year, and I was happy for the plywood, and so it made me appreciate things. I mean, I slept I was in a broom closet without electricity. It was 100-some degrees. I had a fan. I loved the fan. I wanted to bring it back with me, but I didn't have room. You just appreciate little things. And I thought the best thing at the time for me was kids your age would send us care packages, and I always had food and trail mix and beef jerky. Fifth graders they'd be in their early 20s now. Somewhere there's some college kid who I got to thank for sending me a big bag of trail mix because I appreciated all those little things so much.
Showers,
I mean, hot shower.
Number one, whenever you get a shower, almost anywhere on the planet, even on military bases, if you're down for training, sometimes you don't always get a hot shower. Number one. Number two, when you're deployed, you shower with a 5-gallon water bucket and throw it over your head. And I'll never forget when one of the soldiers got a care package and they had one of those camp showers where you could pour it into this burlap or canvas bag, and it kind of came out like a shower. I mean, after that, everybody's writing their parents going, send me one of these because it made it like a shower. So it was so hot out, if you kept the 5-gallon water tank outside, it was warm. So when you put it in that canvas thing, and it was semi-warm. I got a hot shower in Somalia with no running water. Think about that.
Do you think something from the military has changed the way you think?
I'm just glad I have the ability to focus and direct my energies, and I feel more confident when I spend my time well, when I do my best. Those things build on each other, and as long as you've got that, it kind of never goes away.
There's a lot of colorful language in the military, but the one word that I don't let my 6-year-old use is can't. I couldn't use can't in front of soldiers when we were deployed or when we were working on the mission. So I could use challenge, I could use we've got to overcome some things, but can't's a bad word. So my kid, when she says to me, I can't do the monkey bars, I'm like, no, yes you can. You may not do them all today, but you can do the monkey bars, and you will be able to. So can't is a word, is a 4-letter word for me. So that's one of the things I learned out of the military.
Did you guys make any friends that you are still close with now?
Oh yeah, there's plenty of different units you served and you experienced different things in your life. When I was brand new second lieutenant, I went to the basic course, and we all didn't know what we were doing. So some of those guys and gals I still stay in touch with now because we experienced it together. And then certainly when you go to combat with people, there's an array of people who when you see each other, it's wow, how you been? And then of course you stay in touch on Facebook. But that's another cool thing about being in the military when you meet, these guys were just talking a minute ago about being in the similar units, and they knew some of the similar people, and all of a sudden it becomes old homeschool week again when you bump into somebody who served in a division with you or a unit with you. So even if you didn't know them then, you're yeah, I remember that, yeah, I remember that. And it's kind of easy to pick up, kind of when you go back and talk about when you come out of college and come home and talk about what happened to you in high school. That's what happens to us in different units. We come back and talk about that kind of
We
thing.
just had that moment. We actually served in the same
Yeah.
brigade, it sounds like.
Yeah, same place, same time.
Yeah.
What was one thing you loved most about your job?
I love the leadership. I mean, just generally speaking. I mean, to stand in front of people like a coach, right, and ask them to do something that's hard or challenging. Because we some of the things that we do and we ask our soldiers to do are really, really tough. And sometimes you can even have fatal consequences by some of the things we're doing. So you've got to be confident in your planning and know your people's capabilities, know their strength, know their how far they can run, but yeah, that leadership is, I mean, there's nothing quite like it, right?
Yeah, I would say that two things that strike me on that is that at a very young age, you're given a heck of a lot of responsibility and really have the opportunity to do what you want to do with that opportunity, so to speak. I mean, there's certain parameters. You continually, which is part of our careers significantly, talk about the combat environment we're in, which is a big part of our careers. But there's also, like I said, I had the experience of the funeral with Ronald Reagan and inauguration down in Washington, D.C., so there's a lot of cool experiences you get out of the military that you wouldn't necessarily associate with it. And then back to the point about being in charge or being on, saving people's lives, those kind of, that's a big deal that, like, right away, 18, 19 years old, you're out there. You're the person I need to save me when I got shot. If I got shot, I didn't get shot. But my point is that you all of a sudden, you're really it. You're doing it right away. We're not waiting for you to train a few years or be the junior attorney for a while. You show up, you're in a combat zone, you're the leader, you're the medic, you better do your job because somebody out here counts on you that quick.
What was it like during your training?
We tried to simulate as real of training as we could. We didn't use real bullets, but we would use paintball, kind of like you might do for a birthday party. But to practice that type of shooting, and you're trying to condition your soldiers for those tough situations we're talking about. Guys like this right here, medic. We'd practice doing IVs right there. Stick a line and give somebody an IV bag, and just trying as many things as we can to get people prepared. Just like you're getting ready to play a football game or anything else, or get prepared for a test. You want to study and you want to prep. That's what we would do in the military.
I think I got through some of the training because we embraced the suck together, for lack of a way to put it. So, I mean, when you go after your officer's training or basic training, the people standing to your left and right, the men and women, have the same fear. They don't want to drop out. They want to be successful.
I just want to say thank you for, like, all three of you guys and every single person that has served. You guys make life for every American so much easier, and I feel so much safer anywhere I go, and I just want to say thank you guys so much.
We celebrate Veterans Day on the anniversary of the armistice that ended World War I. The armistice that began on the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month. The timing of this holiday is quite deliberate in terms of historical fact. But somehow it always seems quite fitting to me that this day comes deep in autumn, when the colors are muted and the days seem to invite contemplation. It is, in a way, an odd thing to honor those who died in defense of our country, in defense of us, and wars far away. The imagination plays a trick. We see these soldiers in our mind as old and wise, but most of them were boys when they died, and they gave up two lives, the one they were living and the one they would have lived. When they died, they gave up their chance to be husbands and fathers and grandfathers. They gave up their chance to be revered old men. They gave up everything for our country, for us. And all we can do is remember. I will not fail thee nor forsake thee. In memory of those who gave the last full measure of devotion, may our efforts to achieve lasting peace gain strength. Let us make a vow to our dead. Let us show them by our actions that we understand what they died for. Strengthened by their courage, heartened by their value, and born with their memory, let us continue to stand for the ideals for which they lived and died.
In the long history of the world, only a few generations have been granted the role of defending freedom in its hour of maximum danger. I do not shrink from this responsibility. I welcome it. I do not believe that any of us would exchange places with any other people or any other generation. The energy, the faith, the devotion which we bring to this endeavor will light our country and all who serve it. We shall pay any price, bear any burden, meet any hardship, support any friend, oppose any foe to assure the survival and the success of liberty.